Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are actually on episode 12 of Saved You a Seat, which is kind of crazy. We appreciate all your support. Today, we're going to talk about webinar presenting and hosting 101. I have a guest speaker with us today, a very good friend of mine and someone who is well versed on presenting and hosting. I'm guessing that some of you have probably seen her and know how wonderful she is. But today I have Linda Grahovic. She is the Director of Education and Marketing for F&F Companies, also a very good friend of mine, in case I didn't mention that. And she and I
Hi,
do a lot of
Leslie.
hello, Linda. She and I do a lot of presentations together, so we're excited to be able to do one today. We are used to traveling with each other and seeing each other all the time, and we haven't been able to in a long time, so this is the closest we can get. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple housekeeping for those of you that maybe haven't joined us in the past. We are going to go through our presentation. We encourage you to ask questions through the questions or chat feature, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. Sometimes it moves, so if you go ahead and type questions in there, we'll try and get to them. If by chance we don't get to your question, we will answer it. We will just include it as part of our follow-up email. We send a follow-up email after every episode, a day or two later. We include a link to the recording in case you want to listen again, or in case you want to share it with anyone else in your office. We include any handouts or any material that we might want to also have you take a look at. And then we will include a Q&A based on the questions we receive, so that in case we didn't get to them all or you couldn't remember an answer, that you can go ahead and take a look at it. And then, of course, you're always welcome to reach out. I'm going to speak for Linda because I know her. You're welcome to reach out directly to either Linda or myself if you have any questions or comments. We're both more than happy to provide any follow-up for you guys, so please don't hesitate. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, today we're going to talk about webinar and presenting. Why are we talking about it? Well, because of COVID-19, right? I mentioned Linda and I used to travel all the time, and we haven't done so because we are housebound. And obviously the need for webinars, go-to meetings, Zoom meetings, team meetings, but essentially virtual. Even my kids were in virtual school. It became obviously a necessity instead of convenience. So a lot of people kind of got thrown into the mix, right, Linda? So people that have never had to present or had to, set up a call or really know how to go about things virtually kind of got thrown into it. For us, we've kind of always done it. Whether you present in person or whether you present virtually, it's kind of the same thing, just with less interaction. But a lot of people kind of got thrown into it. So we thought, let's go ahead and do a presentation on it, because it's not going to go away. Even as COVID maybe kind of dwindles down or people make their way back to their workplace, we are seeing that a lot of people are going to stay remote. I mean, Linda, would you not agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. It's been such a pendulum shift from, audio calls to video calls. And a lot of people truly feel that, what's the big deal? I mean, whether you present on a stage or you present in front of the camera, what's the difference? But there are a lot of inherent differences. You've got different technology, you have a different style that you have to kind of get used to. You can't just, you know, be a monotone up on stage while there's a PowerPoint in back of you. You kind of have to rethink the whole audience engagement too.
Yeah, that's probably, I think, we're going to talk about today, to Linda's point, we're going to talk about kind of this is twofold, right? It's kind of how to be a good presenter, whether you're in person or whether you're on a webinar. A lot of those go hand in hand and they don't change. But there are some additional things, as Linda just pointed out, that you have to think about. You don't have that eye contact. You don't have that person's undivided attention, which we're going to get to. So you really do have to say, okay, here's how to be a good presenter in general, but I have to take it a step further, and here's how I can be engaging and get people interested, not only in webinars. Everything we're going to go over today can be for any type of seminar, webinar, even a meeting. I mean, meetings are tough remotely, right? They're almost a borderline of presentation because you're not sitting in a room together. So everything we go over today, if you're not somebody that hosts large webinars, that's okay. Think about lunch and learns for realtors. Think about putting something together for your community lenders. I mean, you can really do a lot, and you can use this as marketing, ways to grow. You can provide information not just on your firm, but compliance, or just presentations on buying homes. Really anything that you did in person, you can do virtually. You just have to know how to go about it. So That's why we have this slide here. It says, the big idea. People just think like a meeting or, I don't really do webinars. You probably do. You just never called them webinars, right? You had a lunch and learn, or you went around and handed out flyers, but you had that FaceTime. You don't have that anymore. So you kind of have to think, okay, how can I do what I was doing, and how can I market, and how can I, air quotes, get in front of people virtually? And this is how you do it. So we're going to first start with the basics of presenting. So I mentioned Linda and I have presented many times together. That is an understatement. Linda and I have actually, I should nicknamed ourselves the Thelma and Louise show. We have presented so many times together that we rarely even have to do prep work, because I just know she knows what she's talking about and I know what I'm supposed to talk about, and we just go back and forth. So,
Well, and
um,
isn't that the beauty of what we'll talk about a little later is having the right presenters? And when you present things, there's no reason why it has to only be one person. Make it more of a conversation and bring a friend on board that you know knows their stuff and can help you.
Agreed. And actually, a lot of times, having more than one presenter makes it a lot more interesting, because people have a variance in the way that they present, but also a different take on different subjects. So Linda's right, we are going to talk about that, but definitely don't box yourself into that you have to do it all. Utilize the people in your office. I mean, that is an advantage of virtual, right, Linda? It's hard to book people, get them to travel, let company prove it, all that type of stuff, to go do a seminar or a presentation. But virtually, I mean, you have endless resources just within your office that you can use. So that's actually an advantage of a virtual presenting.
Oh, I definitely agree. In this way, I'll say in the old way, you weren't able to bring a closer with you to an appointment, or maybe one of your admins or one of your examiners, because they needed to stay in the office. Well, now this is an advantage, not only to your customer get to have a video call or a video webinar with those people that normally couldn't go out there, but you will learn a lot about your own employees. There are going to be people that you had no idea shine in these types of meetings.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we call them subject matter experts, right? And a lot of times you guys hear the same people. I'm certain many of you are tired of hearing me speak about things all the time, or people that you constantly see. And that's because we do have the ability to travel, and people are considered experts in certain topics. And so they travel around. But to Linda's point, you can't pull that closer, right? But who better to talk about like customer service or particular closings to your lenders or realtor than that closer? So you do have access to a lot more talent, if you will, than if you had to, take it on a roadshow. So,
Yeah,
so
definitely utilize those human resources, right? I mean,
yeah.
every company has great resources, and we kind of forget about the humans in our offices that are the greatest resources to our customers.
Absolutely. So, all right. So we are going to go into presentation styles and how to present, and just some things to keep in mind. But before we get started, the one thing you always have to focus on, and I think this applies to everywhere, but definitely when you're talking virtual, and think about this outside of just webinars, like I said, because not everybody does that, right? It could be a big presentation you're giving for work, or it could be a marketing presentation. It could simply be just a meeting. You need to establish an objective. People are getting caught into all of these online virtual stuff nonstop, right? And so they want to know, why are we here? What key decisions need to be made? What actions need to be taken? I cannot stress to this, and I know Linda's going to chime in here in a second, but be very mindful of attendees' times and also other presenters, which we'll talk about, and then set an agenda, share it. So I mean, think about it this way. We could have inviting you to this webinar today with no descriptions of what we were going to cover. You probably wouldn't have showed up. You wouldn't have been, I don't know what to expect. I don't have time for this. So just be very clear and concise whenever you're setting up a meeting, a webinar, a seminar, whatever it is. I just threw this in here because I found with this whole virtual world, people feel like just that need to connect. And sometimes they're creating these meetings, but they don't really have an agenda. And then people are less and less likely to not only be engaged, but to show up. So,
Leslie,
yeah,
I really like what you said, not only for webinars, but just for meetings.
yeah.
Because how many meetings do we get invited to where, like you said, maybe had no a good subject line, but then you get onto the meeting and you don't even know who's supposed to be talking. So even when you schedule a meeting, at least, three bullet points on what you plan on covering in that 30 minutes. And if you're not really 100% sure, you have questions about that meeting, add those questions to the calendar invite that's sent out. Or maybe even just a reminder to send a calendar invite. Uh, I guess I'm so used to people sending calendar invites, I can't believe people don't, not everybody sends them, but not everybody does.
No, because they're used to being in the office and just walking around to people and saying, "Hey, let's go grab a quick meeting in the conference room," and you just can't do that now. So
Right,
we're going
right.
to talk about some more of those points, but I just before we even got into presentations, I mean, the very basics is make sure you have a reason to meet. Otherwise, you're not going to hold people's interest.
You
All right, so we are going to talk about how to engage your audience and be a better presenter. I mean, I
mean
know
without
this
tap dancing?
exactly, right? I mean, I've only got a few tricks up my sleeve, so if they don't work, we're out of luck. So, um, believe it or not, there is kind of an art or a science to being a good presenter. I know, listen, we have all sat through good seminars or presentations, and we have all sat through bad ones. Doesn't mean the content wasn't good. It just means maybe the presenter wasn't as engaging, or you couldn't connect, or something like that. So you can't just be a subject matter expert on things and show up and expect that your event is going to go well, right? You need to say, okay, I need to engage people. I need to have a particular style. I need to have a plan. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So, the very first thing, and I know Linda and I could not agree on this more, is just you've got to be authentic. You know, the worst is when you go see someone and they're up there and they just completely are not like, you feel like you can't connect with them. You feel like that maybe they know their stuff, maybe they don't, or maybe they think they know so much more than you and they don't. You know, you're just one step away, right? I always say when people get nervous to present is, just remember that they're there to hear you for a reason, which means you know just a little bit more about what you're talking about than them. But that doesn't mean you have to be condescending or, rambling on or anything like that. Just be yourself. Just think of if you were sitting and having coffee with somebody, but you just happen to be having coffee with however many people are in the audience or how many ever people you're talking virtually. But being authentic is going to be the only way that you can truly connect with an audience, right, Linda?
Oh, I can't disagree with that at all. And part of being authentic is being honest too. I mean, how many times, Leslie, have you been asked to do a presentation on maybe a topic that you're not 100% comfortable with?
I
I
endless.
know that right away you'll say, you know what, I can do that for you, but let me pull in XYZ person who I respect that can fill in the gap.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And you can't be the subject matter expert on everything, right? And that's also what kind of going back to what Linda said is that's when you bring in someone else, right? You may say, "Hey, of these 5 things you want me to talk about, I'm great on these 3 or 4, but this one is just not my area, but I happen to know someone who it is, so we can just co-present." Everyone's going to be better off for it, and they're going to respect you more because you didn't try and fumble your way through it, and you're going to be able to relate and connect to your audience more as well.
Exactly. And you've brought somebody else in and you care so much about that customer that you did bring somebody else in.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about being authentic, and it's, Linda and I are both certified HOP leaders for Home Buyer Outreach Program for Alta, and we've been doing it for years. And one of the things that we do when we're training other HOP leaders is we ask them, and we can't ask everyone today, obviously. I mean, you're welcome to type it in so we can get some ideas. But when you go to a presentation or you attend a webinar or you attend a meeting, what characteristics are you looking for in a presenter? And these are just some of the ones that have always come up. So engaging, we've talked about, like, you have to engage your audience. Standing up behind a podium and reading bulleted lines by a paragraph, blah, 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 you may as well be Charlie Brown's teacher at that point. No one is listening to you. They can read. They don't need you to read off the slides. You need to be engaging. You need to make eye contact. You need to talk to them. Trustworthy. I'm gonna let Linda talk about trustworthy.
Why? Have we had situations where possible presenters weren't trustworthy?
I plead the fifth.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, but that's part of the whole process of actually finding the right presenter for the right thing. If I had a certain reputation in the marketplace that, I just kind of winged it and, didn't present very well, then that person would not trust that I could do it for their customer. Because let's face it, we're going in front of your customers and it's going to be a reflection on you. I mean, my favorite one though, Leslie, is the energetic one. And I don't think you and I have a lack of energy, but there are days that we may not have that energy. And that co-presenter or that other person in the office can help you get into the mode or the mood for that next presentation that you're doing.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, I obviously have a lot of energy. Linda, you have a lot of energy. I think in general, a lot of presenters that are really good presenters and do their due diligence are have a lot of energy. But there's just sometimes where, you're just not feeling it. And that's not the audience's fault, especially virtually. I mean, they can't even see you. So they're reliant completely on, the energy that you're putting through virtually. If you're doing video, they can see you, but it's still not obviously in person. So it's very important that you are not just kind of up there putting in your time to, your 55 minutes before you walk off. Nobody wants to sit through that, especially virtually. It's boring.
Right.
We talk,
I
yeah,
mean,
we
there,
talk,
remember that one time, and it was really just one time where you were not feeling well
yep,
and you were honest about it, and it was right before, I think it was a 2-hour presentation we had to do on a
yep,
very serious topic.
yep.
Um, but even though it's a serious topic and even though someone isn't feeling well, you still have to present this high energy or else you're not going to get that engagement.
Absolutely. And don't try and just go up there and not feel well and go through it. Let the people you if even if you're the only presenter, let them know ahead of time because they might even tell your group, or you can open up your webinar with it and say, "Hey, I'm not feeling that great today, but we're going to go ahead." People will their reaction will change. They'll say, "Well, she wasn't like as energetic as usual, but I get it. She wasn't feeling well." So just be
Well, yeah, and it goes
honest.
to one of your other points. Then you become relatable.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've already talked about authentic. So to me, relatable and knowledge and factual kind of all go to the same, right? So when you stand up there, Linda, and someone stands behind a podium and they just kind of talk and read, I really can't relate to that. I want to see that they've got some firsthand experience. So, when they're looking at a slide, that they're not reading it, that they're just using it as a reminder of like talking points, if you will, and they're
Yeah,
telling
that's
me
my pet peeve.
stories. Yeah, and they're saying, hey, this, that, and the other. I will preface that with, I mean, I do, and so does Linda. We do a lot of presentations on compliance, as that is my job at
Mhm.
SoftPro. And sometimes you do have to be a little bit boring, and that's okay, right? Have some fun with it. So, I mean, there's some things where I have to read for legal purposes. I have to read it exactly as it is in, a statute or something, but that's not my whole presentation. So you
Right.
want your audience, especially virtually, to relate to you. And we're going to get into how to do that through storytelling here in a minute. But you can't just, spew facts. I can Google facts, right? I need you to explain it to me in a way that I can truly understand it because I don't want to read a 387 page, new regulation or rule coming out. So think about like, I need to know what I'm talking about. And Linda, you mentioned that already. And don't agree to things that you don't know because that's not going to end well. And I need to relate that information to my audience through facts, right? I mean, don't make stuff up. If you don't know, say you don't know. And again, that's a huge thing we have a slide on. But, you know,
Yeah, you can have the facts up on the screen, whatever compliance quote that you have to put up there or big long underwriting type of answer, but then interpret that to something that you can break down into maybe 3 points.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good trick. You also keep in mind, and I don't think we have it in here, but on this here, it's your job as a presenter, and I cannot stress this to you enough, especially virtually. It is your job if you're holding a meeting, if you're holding a webinar, if you're holding a seminar, or whatever you're doing, it's your job to know your audience. If you have a really light-hearted, laid-back audience, kind of make it more casual and be fun and light. If you are walking into a room of people that would rather be anywhere than there, but they have to come to your session, whether it's for CLE or their boss told them, maybe just, present the facts in a good way and relate to them, but, don't try and make it light and fun all the time because they're not interested. So you have to be able to adapt, which that's always one of my words, adaptable. When you walk into a situation, you might think this is how it's going to go, and then you realize no, it's not. These people don't want this or that. So it's your job as a presenter, whether it's in person or virtually, to really know your audience. Okay. So, Linda, you just mentioned this, so I'm going to let you have a stab at this, but I'm just going to say one thing. This is my absolute number one gripe with anybody when they present. If you do not know the answer to a question, which, by the way, you cannot know the answer to every question, just say, gosh, I don't really know. That's a great question. And I'll try and find out with you and maybe get their card and email them after or email it out to the whole group. But Linda, I know this is a gripe for you too. You and I can't stand when people don't just say they don't know. I will say this, when you say you don't know, and that's a really good question to someone, that makes you a lot more relatable. So, and trustworthy, right?
Hey, I would love to be little Miss Smarty Pants, but I'm not. You know, I
Yep.
I will be right up front with regards to not knowing the answer. And this really kind of separates the girls from the women and the men from the boys, because as a presenter, if you do know your subject matter so well, you are open to questions. You open it up to the audience, powering away those questions to you. And it's a matter of pride and knowledge and relatability that you can provide answers. But when the audience comes up with some questions that I don't know the answer to, or I've never even thought of, to me, that's an educational opportunity right there. Number one, I get to go back and find out the answer. And number two, I get to follow up with that customer another time. So to me, I look at it not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity.
I 100% agree. It's the same as I absolutely love watching other people present the same material that I present because I learn so much from them. And I think, wow, that's a much clearer way of describing something or explaining something than I do. So it's kind of falls along the same thing. It's okay not to know everything. You're still the subject matter expert, especially when it comes to compliance. I mean, that's kind of an evolving topic, right? There's always new questions and changes. So if you're holding a virtual lunch and learn and a lender asks you something about the CFPB and you don't know, that's something you can easily find out. But just say, gosh, that's a great question. I don't really know, but I would love to talk to you about this later. Or even, a lot of times the question is something everybody wants to know. So to Linda's point, it gives you a reason to do like a follow-up email and it starts conversations. And especially if you're trying to keep them as a client or get them as a client, saying you don't know might be your best ticket into somebody as a customer. Okay, so storytelling, it's not just for around the campfire anymore. What do I mean by that? What I mean is when you are presenting, again, facts are facts, right? I could stand up there and read the bullet points. Linda could do the same thing. That's also stuff you can Google. You need to kind of reel your attendees in, especially I really think this is more important virtually because it's really easy to sit and work on my computer, and I'm sure some of you are doing it right now, and that's okay. But I'm trying to hold something, whether it's a meeting or something like that virtually. I need a way to really engage my audience, and the way to do that is through storytelling. It is truly along the same lines as if you're writing a book, right? You have a setting, what are you trying to talk about? What's your snapshot, time, place, circumstance? What's the new rule? What's the new regulation? Whatever you're talking about. Your characters, the people in the team, it's CFPB, who's playing? Conflict, meaning like how did we resolve it? And then or giving them a reason to care. I'm sorry, not how to resolve it. And then how do you resolve it? I know this kind of seems weird, but you can take any topic that you want to talk about virtually and personalize that topic. So when you just present facts and data, that story is a little hard to follow. I've lost interest. You're just kind of throwing things at me. But when you personalize it and you kind of paint a picture, and a lot of times you might not realize it, but you have a story to go with a lot of things that you talk about. So kind of removing your professional hat and saying, okay, I can stand in front of these lenders and I can recite this, this, and this, or these realtors, or I can tell them about the time where this actually applied at a closing, right? I mean, Linda, you and I could tell stories till we're blue in the face, but if you can't personalize what you're talking about, you are going to have a very hard time engaging an audience in person, let alone virtually through a webinar session.
Well, and that really just goes hand in hand with being relatable and knowledgeable. We all have tons of stories. Doesn't it always seem like you hear all these stories from, your grandparents or your older aunts and uncles, and how they literally can engage you for 8 hours just with their stories? But think about it, no matter what age you are, you have a ton of stories. I was a realtor for 8 years. I can tell you a lot of real estate related stories. I've been in new construction. I can talk, builder verbiage all day long as well. And all those come with stories. We all have prior jobs. Some of us have kids. So there's always a story that can relate to the situation you're talking about. This way, depending on your audience, like if my audience was realtors, how do they know that I know what they're going through? Everybody wants to feel like you have walked in their shoes, because then there's respect that comes with that. I know how hard it used to be when we didn't have virtual anything in the real estate world, and we had to show 30, 40 houses in the winter, 30 below zero. And now we can do virtual showings. So you become relatable because of those stories, and you become more knowledgeable because of those basis of stories. So utilize those stories during your presentations.
And in backing up everything that Linda just said, I mean, I always just I always just try and remind myself, like, I just think of Charlie Brown's teacher, right? The want, 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 want. That's what you become if you can't personalize things. You become essentially a walking Google. Nobody wants that. They want to hear like what happened. And, if you're truly in front of a group of people, whether it's virtually or not, and the topic is how to be a good presenter, like, I mean, we don't have time, but Linda and I could go on for hours. I could tell you story after story of the mistakes that I've made to become a better presenter and things that have happened and how you have to react. And I'm telling you, when you do it, like Linda just said, they immediately relate to you. They don't think of you as like an, oh, this person's been doing it, I could never do what they do, to, oh wow, they fell off the stage and had to hop back up. Like they then relate to you and say, okay, I can learn a lot from this person. So it doesn't matter what it is, like Linda said. I guarantee there's something or someone that you can somehow personalize to make a connection to whatever it is you're trying to relay to an audience. And I cannot stress how important this is virtually, because you don't have that personal contact.
Right. And Leslie, I have one question for you.
Yes,
Do you have your
absolutely.
master's degree in teaching?
I do not know.
No, but this is what we're doing. You and I were both born in the title industry, obviously,
Right,
but
right.
I don't have a master's degree in teaching. And a lot of what we do when it comes to presenting and storytelling, these are things that people are professionals at, that have honed their skills for years. Think of like chief learning officers now, and friends of mine that do have their bachelor's or their master's degree in teaching. There is an art and a science, not only in presenting and teaching, but also in testing. And these are things that we're doing as an offshoot of our other career, which is the business that we're in right now.
Yep, I could not agree more. So, just everything we're going to go over from this point forward, just keep in mind, how can you make it relate to you? How can it personalize it? And how can you get that story told? All right, so now going on to like actually what to do when you want to prepare to present a webinar, seminar. And I keep saying all these ones because I'm really hoping that some of you that haven't been doing it take advantage of it and start reaching out to your customers to do some lunch, like I keep saying lunch and learns, but it could be anything for the realtors, first time home buyers. Reach out to your chamber of commerce, reach out to your board of realtors. They're dying for speakers. They're trying to stay in front of people. So even if you haven't done it, hopefully this will give you the confidence or the resources to do it so far. So be prepared. I mean, Linda and I maybe take that to an extreme, but we also have lived through a lot of things that have not gone the way we planned when we have presented. The first one I think is a very big deal, and I think it's very scary to a lot of people, right? I want to stress that I have on here memorized talking points. I do not mean that you need to memorize your entire presentation, because again, if you do, you're not really relating to that audience, right? And my presentation might be different in one state versus another because they're the way they do business, or one audience to another because they react different or they handle different things. What I'm saying is have an idea of what it is that you're going to talk about. Don't just look up at the slide and hope it triggers something. So go through your presentation, make sure you have talking points that you are confident about speaking, and that you have some stuff on slides that are going to trigger, okay, that's right, I want to tell this story, I want to talk about that. So I don't mean you need to memorize your entire presentation. I just mean you need to be we already know you're knowledgeable enough to talk about it. So just make sure you have some, your talking points well enough that God forbid there was a technical issue and your screen went blank or your computer fell off and broke when you tripped over the cord. Not that that ever happened.
Never happened to you.
Never. That you could still kind of go through it from memory and say, okay, this might not be exactly what I was going to do, but I know enough of what, I memorized enough of what I was going to talk about. So I'm going to let Linda talk about the next one because I feel like I just went on too long.
Don't speak longer than needed. Sometimes you have to give yourself the hook. That
Yes.
was my, I'll say, self downfall in the very beginning. I just felt like if I'm speaking 60 minutes, there better be 60 slides. But you don't have to do that. Make sure you're going through your slides and you have the subject matter you want and get through it within a reasonable amount of time. There might be one slide that can take 20 minutes, who knows? But make sure you're getting through the rest of what that agenda was saying and that you don't have to go another 30 minutes or gyp the audience because your time is already up. And I know that you love to stay in your lane.
I do. This is probably, I'm going to say one thing about speak longer than needed too is it's rude. At the end of the day, it's rude. You're not being mindful of other people's times. It's one thing if like you go a couple minutes over on something you're hosting, but if it's you're co-presenting, your co-presenter is expecting a certain amount of time to speak about stuff as well, and so you need to be mindful of that. And I have a pet peeve of when you're at a presentation or you're watching something via through WebEx, and they just go through slides and say, "Oh, we're not going to talk about this, 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 this," because they've gone too long. I'm like, "Wait, what was on those slides? It was important enough to be in the presentation, but now you're not telling me about it." So to Linda's point, yeah, like you don't need so many slides. If you have enough time, your talking points, right? So you can just talk about it. You don't have to have it visually up on a slide. So just be mindful of not only the time for the overall meeting, but be mindful if you have any other speakers because they're expecting a certain amount of time, which leads me to the stay in your lane. The stay in your lane is so important, and Linda and I have both been at the receiving end of people not staying in their lane. We will not name names and we will not go on because it'll take hours to talk about. But when you are asked to speak about a certain topic and you have co-presenters or panel type situation, everyone has a part, if you will. Everybody has something that they have all agreed upon. This is kind of what you'll talk about. This is what you'll talk about. I mean, unless it's, Linda and I, we will talk about everything. But even Linda and I will say, okay, you take these slides, I'll take these slides, and then we'll both chime in. Like, you have to have some sort of plan. If you start talking about what someone else is supposed to talk about, you've left them high and dry. You've just thrown them under the bus. So I just take everything for the rest of the slide and I talk about it. And then I say, what do Linda, how do you feel about that? Linda was already planning on talking about rehearse and record or use tech, but I've just stolen her thunder and I've talked about it. So be respectful, stay in your lane. Don't talk about what other presenters are going to talk about, and don't talk about things that have nothing to do with your topic. That's also, you lose an audience real quick virtually if you just start talking and people are like, wait a minute, did I, what? Why are we talking about baseball? Like you don't, people get baffled and they start to ramble. You got to reel yourself in, and like you got to give yourself the hook, as Linda just said, is if you can't stay in your lane, you got to punt it to someone who can kind of take over and let you regroup.
Yeah, Leslie, I'm going to take this next point because I know that you don't do this.
I do not. That's why I'm leaving it for you.
Rehearse and record yourself. You know, like Leslie can't do that. It's just not in her. She actually, if she rehearses too much or she records herself, it actually gets her off her game. So you kind of have to know who you are and how best to present. I do rehearse a little bit and I have recorded myself because I want to try to either review myself every year to see if I'm starting to add ums or ers or whatabouts, or if I start talking over people. Because sometimes I get so excited that I want to talk about this topic that Leslie's talking about. I'm just going to ramble right on top of her. But I've got to step back. I either look at items or look at presentations that have been recorded and edit myself the next one, or I rehearse and record myself on a new topic so that I'm not nasally, I'm clear, because sometimes we get a little lazy, at least I do, where I'll just keep talking and I'll ramble, but then I've got to sit back, see how I'm being presented, and maybe just slow down a little bit.
Yeah, Linda is true. I don't know why I can't record, I can't rehearse. I rehearse and as like I'll go through my presentation and kind of talk about it to myself. And every now and then if I know it's a very specific time to something, I will make my poor children sit through it. But as far as recording it, I just get I don't know why. I don't do well with it. I'm not going to make Ellen speak up, but we do have Ellen Crema, our director of marketing, on the phone right now. She manages our questions. She asked me to record a 60-second voice, no video, voice commercial that we were doing. And my Lord, I'm not even going to tell you how many takes I did it because I just don't normally record myself and listen to it. This is being recorded and you'll all listen to it and that doesn't bother me. But for some reason, when I just kept finding flaw after flaw after flaw after flaw. And then I sent her like 6 ones to choose from. And I'm sure she was all like, they sound exactly alike. So we'll just use this one.
Well, because that
But
was scripted and you're not a
right.
scripted person.
I am not, and that's a very good point. So we put this in here with the rehearse and record because it really does benefit a lot of people. It probably would benefit me if I could do it. But if you're not comfortable with it, it's okay. Just make sure you have your timing down. That's all I would say. Just kind of go through it to yourself and time yourself. But if you don't want to record it, it's fine. But it is a really good way, especially if you're new to the whole presentation circuit type thing of, to Linda's point, of the ums and the ers and the, do you have a particular time that you kind of just stop and try and regroup and you may not realize you're doing it. So that is certainly helpful. But if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But if you can do it, it's a great suggestion to do it. So
A 3 or 4 out of 5 is perfectly fine.
yeah, exactly. So, Linda, I'm going to let you. I mean, I could talk all day and tell you story after story about, using their computers. Show up and they say, "Oh no, I thought you were bringing yours," and you're like, "I'm literally reading the email where you said we'd be using yours," or "I sent you the presentation, they don't have it," or "We don't have a projector," blah blah blah. So, I'm gonna let you, Linda, chat about this one.
I'm just going to say one word: checklist.
Yep.
If someone wants you to present, send them your little checklist. And the checklist could be just a few questions. Should I bring my computer? Should I bring my own clicker? Should I bring my own speaker? Will you have internet?
Yeah, that's a very important one.
So just because you're being asked to do something, don't think that they're going to have everything prepared for you. And plus, I don't know about you all, and Leslie, you are like me, where we need to know. I'm not a wing it the day of the presentation. Where is it at? Am I up on a stage? Am I on ground level? Do I have a lavalier? I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of like J-Lo. I have things that I need.
Well,
I need my
I'm
pink
gonna
M&M.
interrupt you with the lavalier. That is so important if you're female, not to say male or female or anything like that, but if you are female and you are presenting in person, you need to think about where that lavalier is going to fit on you. So you might want to consider wearing a skirt or pants versus a dress. I mean, these are crazy things. Virtually, it's fine, but you could kind of, Linda, to your point, you could make it, are you using a headset or not, right? Make sure everyone can hear you. Don't log in 5 minutes before and assume that GoToWebinar is all set up for you. So, Linda, checklist works both ways, virtually and in person. And I can't stress enough that you need to make sure that you have everything you need so that you have a comfortable presentation.
Yeah, because not only comfortable, but successful. And if we're doing it for our customer or we're doing it for our customer's customer, we want all this to reflect super well on them. Heck with us. It's all about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're there essentially working for them.
Yes.
And you're holding these virtual meetings on behalf of your company or behalf of whomever. One thing I will say, and especially because we're in the virtual world, and another advantage, I'm trying to, some of these pros in here is you guys could do this ahead of time. You could, if you're not going to accept questions live, you guys could potentially do a recording and you can do it until you're happy with it. And then you can make that recording available as your webinar for your lenders or realtors if you're not comfortable doing it in person. So, having the right tech and recording it, you guys can do that without doing a live presentation and you can make it available to whatever partners you want. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, and that is happening more and more now too. I mean, what I call it is simulive, where a portion is already recorded, but live I may introduce that speaker, but the audience doesn't know that that presentation was completely recorded a month ago.
Yep, absolutely. There's, and especially think about how many people are using these platforms right now. And when they have a huge audience, I mean, we've run into it even with our webinar series. We run into where we had to actually reschedule one because GoToWebinar went down. So many people were using it. So if you're not comfortable with the live aspect of it, you can pre-record the bulk of it, and like Linda said, you can still run it as a live webinar and just play that recording, and you can field questions like through the chat box or afterwards,
Yep.
but the bulk of it is already recorded. And the advantage of that is, well, one, it works, and two, you can make that available, right? I mean, you can record your live sessions as well, but you can also send out that link to your partners or whomever. And you're not requiring people to also commit to a particular time, which I think is important. Right now, everyone's very busy. Interest rates are very low. A lot of people buying houses, and they maybe can't like log in today at 10:30. So it's okay because they can listen to the recording and get the same information. So keep it interesting is different than when I was talking about being relatable. This is more about your actual presentation. So declutter your slides, fewer words, more visuals. So most people are visuals, right? I see a slide come up with 50 million words, I instantly kind of black out. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to read that. I hope they're going to just tell me what I need to know. So say goodbye to all the bullet points and paragraphs. So I put in here as an example. So basically don't use a slide like this. I have no visuals on here. It's a boring slide. It's okay. Every slide doesn't have to be rainbows and unicorns and balloons, right? But the majority of your presentation does have to be captivating virtually because you don't have that eye contact. You don't People are at their computers or on their phones, so you want it to be engaging visually. So I put this slide in here exactly like this for a reason. I don't have a single visual, nothing to kind of even tell you what I'm going to talk about. So you know focusing on your narrative, we just talked about that, right, Linda? Like stay in your lane. Don't vary on topics. Make sure you're talking about what they're expecting you to talk about it. Use large fonts so they can read it, short phrases, because some people are going to be working, look over and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Some people are going to be working, look over and say, oh, okay, yeah, I really want to pay attention to this slide because this is something that applies to me. So, and then communicate the message as you would in person. So you have to keep in mind that some people are listening, not viewing. So Linda, I mean, I'm sure you have something to say about this, but there's a lot of
Oh,
people that are
definitely.
probably working right now, not even looking at these slides, which is a-okay, but they may be listening with headsets to our recording, right? So don't assume everyone when you are presenting virtually is looking at what you're talking about. So even though it might sound redundant or that you're repeating stuff, you're not. Like talk to them and put your message across as if they don't have access to the screen in front of them.
Yeah, and that is such a good point because, and that's why it relates even to the visuals. That's why you don't have to clutter up your slides because most people, even during a visual presentation, aren't looking at the screen. Even when you're in person, they're not looking at the screen. They're looking at their phones or their laptops or their surfaces. Um, so, and really now in a world of, earbuds, people are listening a lot more than they are visualizing. Now, granted, if you have a presentation, of course, you might be in an office setting. But if you're listening to something on demand, you are probably just listening to it and not looking at the visuals. So keep the focus on the conversation and less on the visuals.
Could not agree more. So, Linda, I'm going to let you start off with this one. We did kind of already kind of talk about it, but finding the right people are saying, maybe I'm not the best person to do the whole thing, so let's co-present. But this is more about like actually finding the right presenter. So I'm going to let you kind of start off with this
Yeah,
one
and
because I
this
think you're
one's
good
kind
at
of
this.
tough, right?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of professionals in our industry completely. We've got the brightest minds, the greatest customers, but just because they are a subject matter expert does not automatically mean that they're a great presenter. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can have someone that actually provides the content and then a separate person who presents it. So there's no loss of dignity in that because it's very hard to find the perfect speaker for the perfect topic for the perfect audience. And even when you're scheduling presenters, make sure you've done your homework. Have you watched them before? Have you listened to them before? Ask one of your colleagues. So if I was going to do a presentation on whatever it was, let's just say software, and it has nothing to do with title and escrow software, but maybe it's some different software, maybe fraud prevention or encryption. I may reach out to Leslie and say, do you know of anybody who presents this really well? It may be a boring topic, or I don't want to say boring topic. We don't have boring topics in our industry. We just have possibly boring presenters. So reach out to your peers. Who have they used? Put together maybe a speaker bureau. That's what I did recently. Instead of trying to, constantly throw things at a wall to see if they stick, I literally created a list. I sent out an email to, the colleagues that I respect and say, hey, on these 6 topics, who do you recommend? And go from there.
Yeah, I can not agree more. I mean, just because someone is at the, well respected in the industry and known as, kind of a subject matter expert, it doesn't make them necessarily make them the best person for the job of presenting that. And likely they probably don't want to. I mean, not everybody wants to give these presentations, especially virtually. They're just not comfortable with the camera or even just the technology. So, they're probably a good resource to ask whom they think would be, hey, have you seen anyone speak on this topic? And they'll tell you maybe yes or no, and this is who they were. We've all been to a million webinars, seminars, in person, virtually. We've all seen people, but use your resources. You want somebody to come talk about mortgage lending, maybe you aren't the best person, even though you know a lot about it. Maybe reach out to one of your partners and say, hey, who at your company has done some presentations and whatnot that we can co-present this information to the realtors or to first-time home buyers or to whatever it is you're trying to do. So, definitely think outside of the box. It doesn't have to be your friend. I've presented with a million people that I've never met before. I met we met when we were asked to be speakers, and I'll tell you, those are some of the best presentations. So, Linda said, make sure you do your homework. If they have any recordings and you can watch them, that's great. The only other thing I'll
Yes.
add is, solidifying
Ask
your
them,
ask.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely ask them. Trust me, if they're a speaker, they're going to likely have it, and they're going to be happy for you to look at it, because nobody wants to be asked to come and do something where they're not going to shine, right, or do well. They don't want to fail, and so if it's not a right fit, it's not a right fit. So, and the
Well,
last
there's
one here,
some people that will, Leslie.
yes. Well, that is true. Some people just want their name out there, and that doesn't end well for them, though, right? I mean, they
No.
don't look good, so you don't want to set yourself up or your partners for that. And the last thing is just be very clear in what you're asking for, right, Linda? I mean, there's nothing worse when someone says, "Oh, hey, can you come do this?" Blah blah blah. You do your due diligence, you do your homework, you create your presentation, and then you get there and they're like, "Oh, we had to change it to this, and instead of 50 minutes, it's 2 hours." Like, don't do that. Be very
Right,
clear.
right.
And this is also a learning curve on the other side. If you are presenting a webinar that someone's asking you to do, be clear in what your expectations of them are as well, meaning this is what you've asked me to do and this is what I'm prepared to do.
Well, and be very clear. We talked about this before, but I'm going to reiterate it. Be clear on the topic and the other presenters. It really blows my mind when you're trying to put together an entire virtual presentation or a virtual day of education, and you've got 4 presenters lined up, and you're the last one. Come to find out that the other 3 have already touched your topic 3 times.
Yep, you got to stay in your lane, Linda.
Stay in your lane, and you know what? Do not be shy in asking the either the host or the organizer for copies of the other presenters' presentations. Don't be shy, because this way you can go to those other presenters and say, all right, I was supposed to do this. Can we maybe section it off? You can concentrate on this, I'll concentrate on that. Then this way the audience gets 4 distinct topics instead of 4 topics, 4 times, in 4 different ways.
Yeah, I mean, that goes perfect with this second point here is making sure the presenters know what format and what is expected of them and who's speaking on what. I mean, that Linda just went over that. You want to make sure that when you are hosting a webinar meeting or whatnot, that everyone kind of knows their part, if you will. You're kind of orchestrating it. And if Linda is going to talk briefly about something that I'm also going to talk about, that's fine. I know that ahead of time and I can piggyback what she says. I can make us both look great, right? I can say, yeah, I know Linda talked about this earlier, and just kind of backing up what she is saying and blah blah blah, that works great. But you don't know that if you don't have your expectations set or you haven't reached out to the other presenters, which goes to that next point there. you know and I know, Linda, you're very good at this because you put together a lot of webinars, but please make sure and introduce all your presenters prior to a webinar. If you have multiple presenters, nobody wants to show up on the morning of and be like, hi, I'm so and so, I hope we don't talk about the same thing, or I'm going first, or no, I'm going first. Make sure everyone's on the same page, and make sure they know all their tech requirements. This is all kind of stuff we talked about, but if you're the one putting the presentation together or hosting the webinar meeting, it falls to you to make sure your presenters know what's expected of them, everyone has what they need, and that everyone is comfortable with their expectations.
Well, you know what? And I love that word comfortable, because if you have a good presenter and if that presenter is comfortable with you because you have provided all this information beforehand to make them comfortable, they will come back over and over and over, which is
Absolutely.
great for you.
Absolutely. All right, so those are all our tips and tricks of not only being a good presenter, but also how to host and get other presenters. People don't always want to listen to just one person all the time. Trust me, I get it. I host these every other week, and I always try my best to get some other speakers. And sometimes it's just not a topic that allows for it, and people are stuck with me for the hour. But it's just more interesting to have that back and forth and hear insight from other people. So just kind of keep that in mind when you guys are creating things. Also, one other thing I'll mention before the video call etiquette, which I, I love, is pick your own time. It doesn't have to be an hour. You can do 15-minute webinars that people might, hey, I'll pay attention for 15 minutes. You can do 30-minute webinars. Think about when you used to go to bring lunch and talk to someone for 5 minutes and get in front of them. So everything doesn't need to be on a grand scale. It doesn't need to be a 3-hour training, doesn't need to be an hour training. You can make these as long or as short as you want. You know your audience, and that's part of your job, is hosting these webinars and being a presenter. So just keep that in mind, that everything doesn't need to be an hour. I think a lot of people struggle with that, and I think they can't fill it, which, Linda, we have the opposite problem. But I think that, if you're more comfortable doing, hey, I've got a girl in my office who could talk about this on a closing for 15 minutes. Great, record her. Get her on camera, get her on to do it.
Yep.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
Everything
just
should be
chunk
a
them
formal.
or make a
Yeah,
series out of it. I mean, what a great way to kind of dangle the carrot for the next 30-minute segment.
exactly.
So I do
100%.
love this section too, and I know we don't have a ton of time, and most of this all of you know, but the
Right.
reason why we put this in here was for a reminder, because since March, since that first week of March, we have, that pendulum has swung. We've gone from all these audio calls to now video calls, and I think we're getting almost too comfortable in these video calls, where we're starting to forget that we're on the job, we're in front of our
Yep.
customers. So here's a few do's and don'ts. Test your camera, test your microphone. Most of the platforms, Zoom, GoTo, Teams, there's a preview screen. Use it. There's so many people that never even knew where the preview screen was, and I'm like, guys, you click it all the time right before you say join now. With this little snapshot that I put on this slide, I previewed it before I took the picture, and it looked like the teapot was coming out of my head and the birds were coming out of my hair. So I simply turned around, moved it over on the mantle so that I was more centered. Invest in a good microphone. Invest in a good camera. Most of your newer laptops have good cameras and your new monitors have them, but not all of them. So test, test, test.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one thing with the microphone, and Ellen's probably cracking up right now. When we started doing these, I'm like cursed with computers. I don't know why. My microphone kept going in and out. It would work fine for checking when we did like a tech check, and then it wouldn't work at all. So Ellen, being the guru that she is, had IT send me this amazing headset that looks like I'm a professional gamer, but it works and everyone can hear me, because it's very frustrating as an attendee when you hold a webinar and you can't hear the person speaking. That said, sometimes it's beyond your control. It's a connection issue or a platform issue, but do your part, like Linda said, test everything and make sure you have equipment that actually works for what you're trying to do. So I'm gonna let you
Exactly.
keep
Yeah, because
going
there's
here,
two
Linda.
main things, right? The speaking and the seeing.
Yep,
So if you have a good
absolutely.
microphone, that's great. But now let's talk about the webcam or about the visual. Make sure that you position that laptop or your PC at eye level. Make sure that that webcam is right there. Your audience doesn't want to look up your nostrils or down at your forehead. So no matter where your monitor is or your webcam is, make sure are at eye level. If you have to put a box under it, do it. Look at where the lighting is in the room that you're in. If you have a big picture window on your left side, you may need to put a lamp or an O-ring on your right side to balance it out, or else you're going to look like you're halfway in a lit room and halfway in a dark room, like Phantom of the Opera. So, and always look at your camera when you're speaking. I know that you can't see the audience, but even now without a camera on me, I am already conditioned at looking at my camera.
Yeah, so am
And
I.
what I even try to do is if I'm a participant with, either a webinar or I'm maybe one of 5 or 6 presenters, somebody's always watching you on that camera, even while you're not presenting. So I try to have all the presenters right at the top of my screen where my webcam is. So it always looks like I'm looking up into the camera instead of maybe down at my keyboard or down at my phone.
I couldn't agree more. The add lamp to balance window lighting or glare, I laugh every time, because when we first started doing this, everybody's home. This is a little different, right? Conditions, but people have their kids home, their husbands home, their wives home, their dogs home. So it's not, normal working conditions. So I was trying to find the right place to do it. And again, I keep mentioning Ellen. I literally looked like Casper the Ghost in 2 of them. I was laughing so hard, but it was like I didn't think of it ahead of time, and I thought it was the quietest place in my house when everyone in it. But now I'm like, no, if we're going to do a video, I need this, that, and the other. So I promise you, these are great tips. I'm going to take this first one only because I was just talking about it to Linda. I was on a call the other day, and the person who, it was kind of like a meeting, a webinar type thing. The person who was hosting it pops up. It happened to be a video one, and it literally looked like we interrupted their workout. And I was like, okay, like you set this up. We're all dressed. We're all working, like Linda said. Just because we're at home doesn't excuse you from working. So, keep that in mind. I know everyone's a little bit more casual right now. I think that phase is over. I think the whole we're all home with our family and kids is over. And now it's kind of like, okay, let's figure this out, because we don't know how long it's going to continue. So I can't really have your kids in the call anymore. I can't have you in your pajamas. I can't have your husband sitting next to you. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Just when you're getting ready for these webinar to host a webinar or be on it or call, just make sure you're dressed appropriately. Don't assume everybody knows who you are. At the beginning of every single meeting, again, assume some people are not looking at the screen. So introduce what you're there. Oh my gosh, I'm going to talk about this next one too, Linda. The mute yourself. There's nothing worse than the person that says, hey guys, sorry, I'm calling from my car. That part's fine, but then mute yourself. Like, they're listening to the radio or they're typing on their computer. When you're not speaking and you have a large group meeting or a webinar, or you're hosting something, please mute yourself so everyone else doesn't have to listen to your background noise. And then Linda, this tip you put in here I think is so fantastic. The warn anyone around you that you're going to be on a call. I wish my kids were here, but they're not. You know why? Because I made my husband take him for a bike ride so I could do this call with no interruptions. I cannot stress to you enough. We get it. Again, these were unforeseen circumstances, but you are working from home, or you know ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to host this webinar presentation. You can make some accommodations for that 30, 40 minutes or whatnot, because it is very distracting to the people that you're trying to get in front of when you've got other people all around you. So,
Like
um,
me locking the the dog into the laundry room this morning?
Yes. Yeah, my dog is out front because I didn't want him barking if we got a delivery, and odds are Amazon will be here like they are every day. So, um, monitoring the chat box. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure we have Ellen on. That's what Ellen actually does during these. And if we have any questions or comments, she'll pop them into so we see them, because you want people to be engaged, especially depending on the type of webinar or meeting that you're holding. To have a good background, this one I think a lot of people struggle with. This doesn't mean you have to go on and you have to find the stuff that the virtual backgrounds people are using or whatnot. It just means like nobody wants to see your unmade bed or, your laundry room, or just kind of try and find somewhere in your house that resembles some sort of like safe office space that if it's going to be seen in the background, you're comfortable with everyone seeing it. And more importantly, your attendees are comfortable with what they're seeing. Right, Linda?
Right, just like cluttered slides, you don't want a cluttered background. And
Wow,
if,
that's
if you don't have a space like that, which some of us don't, invest in a banner to go in back of you. I know a lot of people like the virtual backgrounds, but depending on the chair you're in or the wild hair like I have, it could look a little weird with those virtual backgrounds. So if you have to, invest in the background. They're not that expensive, or a retractable banner that you used to use for a lot of your conferences and conventions. Drag it
hmm
out and use it in your office space.
agreed. Yeah, Linda,
Well,
I'm
here
gonna let
are
you go through
some
these
great
don'ts.
don'ts, right?
Yeah,
And really, we could just go down the list.
yeah. They're
Don't spontaneously do a video call without warning, because you know, somebody may not be ready for a video call. You know, schedule
100%.
your meetings, log in a few minutes earlier so you can make adjustments, whether it be your background or what you're wearing. Look in the preview screen, make your adjustments, then click join now. Don't rely on body language to make your point, whether you're a presenter or in the audience. The images are small on a lot of people's screens. So if you're rolling your eyes at some internal initiative that somebody has, they're not going to see that, which is probably a good thing as well. With regards to raising your hand, this has been interesting because when you tell somebody, oh, just raise your hand, you instantly think it's that physical motion of raising your hand. But most of us, when we say raise your hand, it's the raise your hand feature within the platform. This way, you know that somebody in the audience wants to say something, and you can avoid all of that speaking on top of each other. I really like don't multitask in the background. Trust me, I've been on a lot of these. I know when the audience is, outreaching on their keyboard or looking at their phone and text messaging. Try to keep those distracting electronics, especially for meetings. I'm not saying for like today's presentation, but your company meetings, put your electronics where they are not even within arm's reach. Make sure they're muted. Make sure your Outlook is muted. And really, don't forget to close all your audio and visual at the end of the meeting, because if that camera light is on, so are you.
Oh my gosh, I can't stress you that enough. It's like forgetting your microphone's on when you are presenting and you walk out in the hallway and continue talking. So
Yeah, and you say, oh, thank goodness that's over.
yeah, exactly. This equipment one, I don't think we really need to go over. This was just more for people
No.
always ask us recommendations or whatnot. So it's in here so that you can reference it. But there's all
Most
sorts of different
people,
cameras.
Leslie, have
Yeah,
great equipment. It's just a
100%.
matter of using them optimally.
Absolutely, yes, 1000%. So, we do have two slides in here on marketing. I mean, this seems kind of intuitive, but for me, it wouldn't be. So, actually, again, Ellen Kramer at SoftPro, who does our marketing, she put together two really useful slides here. And again, we put it together mostly so you guys could reference it, but there's a lot of virtual ways to to promote your virtual webinar. Obviously, you have a database of contacts that you can email. Please don't wait to the last minute. Give everybody a week or two because everyone's trying to work, their schedules. Always send a reminder email prior to that as well. You also have a blog. If you have a blog, make sure you include it in there. Put together a recap after, because then people who maybe didn't get to it will go ahead and be able to see it. Social media is your friend. Post, post, post. You have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have YouTube, you have LinkedIn. Wherever your company or organization has a presence, make sure you use these tips and you get the word out there that you're hosting these webinars, and your followers will see it, have them like it. More and more people will see it, and you can build up some more interest. Of course, put something on your website. It would be silly not to. Email signatures, I think it's probably the easiest way to market something that gets overlooked more than anything else. Every time you send an email, you're reminding someone that you have something going on. Guys should be utilizing your email signature for anything that you guys are doing or promoting. But if you're doing a webinar, go ahead and put it in there, and people will see it.
Yeah, and
If you
change
have,
them up every month. Don't have
oh,
a static one
absolutely.
all year.
Yeah, 100%. Also, discounts. If you happen to be charging for an event, offer discounts for multiple registrations. It's a good way to incentivize attendees to register friends or coworkers for your event too. So if they're contemplating sending 2 or 3 people to come listen or listen virtually, they might do it if they're getting a discount. So also within your webinar, if you're going to be hosting a series, include that information on future webinars at the end of each one. You guys know that we host this every 2 weeks. We always mention it in our recap. And be sure to include all past webinar registrants in the email list for all future webinars. If people have tuned in once, they're likely going to tune in again, but you have to remind people. We're all busy, right? So, Ellen sends out the information for it. People register. She sends out a reminder the day before, and we always have an uptick of registrants because people get the original one and say, oh, that's great, I want to do that. They forget. So when she sends the reminder one, it reminds people, and then you get more attendees and more interest in it. So
Well,
just,
Leslie, and it's
yeah.
okay if they register and they can't make it. It's
No, that's the whole
okay.
point of recording it. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Sometimes we'll have 300 register and, 110 people actually live. That's fine. We really just want our customers to have access to this, whether it's the time that we've chosen to do it or if it's tonight or next week. A lot of these things, a lot of customers have chosen to get the recording links and then use it for internal training. So that's fantastic. That's why we do these. So Linda, great point. We don't care if you're registered because you want to hear us live or not. We care that you're getting the information that we hope is beneficial to you. Okay, so that is a lot of information, and Linda and I could have talked to you for about, I don't know, 5 days on that.
Hmm.
So if you have any questions on anything we've gone over or anything we didn't go over, please feel free to either put them in the question box or email me. People email me all the time, and Linda as well. And we are both happy to get you any information that you need. We will be sending a recap. We have a couple handouts that are going to go with it, just kind of checklist, as Linda said before, on setting up for a webinar, what to do and how to be the most prepared. You'll have access to this recording. We do have recipes and refreshments like we do at the end of every Saved You a Seat webinar. And this week, I'm doing my favorite salad, my kids' favorite salad, strawberry arugula salad with goat cheese. It's life
Yum.
changing. It is so good. You can add chicken if you'd like, or any type of protein. I like it without, but my husband always has chicken in his. It's super easy, super delicious. Of course, if you don't like goat cheese, you could use feta or any other kind. And then, of course, you have to have a beverage with it. Linda, I miss having beverages with you. Um, this is a mixed berry sangria that we really like for the summertime. It's really light. It does have rum in it. If you do not like coconut, you can have any flavored or non-flavored rum, and it would be just as delicious. But as usual, if you try these recipes, which many of you do, which makes me so happy, email me. Let me know what you think. I get a lot of emails throughout the week. Some people even send me some recipes to try, which I have and I appreciate. So keep them coming. With that, we're going to give you your day back. We're going to thank Linda so much for joining us. We're going to have another topic, Linda, in the future that you can come back and talk on. You're so
Oh, my
knowledgeable.
pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. Anybody has questions or anything, like I said, follow up, please reach out. Otherwise, you can expect your recap email within the next day or two from SoftPro. And again, we appreciate you all as customers. We hope you have a great week and we hope everybody stays healthy. Thank you.
Bye.